everyone, and welcome to seventh grade science. All right, sorry that my voice is so raspy and everything, but it is the first day of school, and there's a lot going on, a lot of talking after a summer of not talking very much and everything. I wanted to give you a quick rundown of Schoology and what's going on in there for Science Ninjas, and just some things that we need to have at the very beginning of the year. This way, if someone misses the first day of school, they come in a little bit later, anything like that. At least that way you understand you have the same material and information that everyone else has for us. Same thing if someone comes later in the year and everything. All right, so really quick. First, there is my Schoology website. All right, right now it's the first day of school, so it's relatively bare bones, but all the main things are there that we're going to be using. And it's meant to go along with the workbooks, right? So every chapter that we have, there's a workbook there. The workbooks are there purposely to try to save you time and not having to worry about losing things or anything like that. So it's all kind of organized together. And I tried to make it so that your workbook, where most of your grade comes from, is the actual workbook, because there are just so many labs and activities. Your reading assignments are in there, homework is in there. Most of what we do is inside of there. That hopefully it kind of is meant to correlate with what's going on the website right there. So the first thing that happens when you go to the Science Ninja website, there's the course folder or course materials folder, and there is basically kind of like the agendas right here. And the agenda is probably the number one thing to help people out. This is there to help you whether you went to school and you're wondering, oh, what was my homework because I forgot with all the different classes going on, or if you miss school because you're sick or something like that. This tells you really what's going on. So Monday, we didn't have any school, for example, right, for this first week of school. But if you look like Tuesday, this is the first day of school. Well, it tells you basically what we did. I mean, the first day of school, let's be honest, was more like, where is my locker at? Where are my rooms at? And, what's going on? So we just talked about science and how important it is to you and everything. The second day of school, well, that's where we kind of get into some of the bare bones of things, like getting your workbook and things like that, and what's going on in class and everything. So that's the second day of school that's going on. By the time we get to the third day of school, well, now we'll start getting into some of the main topics for us. So the first thing that we do is we have 2 days of lab safety techniques. So they kind of go through that. Now, while you're looking at these, you might wonder, why are some things highlighted? Right, and so the things that are highlighted, those are the questions of the day. And so in your workbooks, towards the very back of the workbook, there are going to be pages that are kind of blank like this that have the questions of the day. Each one day that we're in school, for each one question of the day counts for 1 point for you. So you've got to write down the question, which is already here for you and everything. In class, we'll go over it. A lot of times in the notes, it's one of the main things. So it shouldn't be like a mystery what the answer is. We're not trying to hide that or anything. So in the workbook, you're going to put the answer in there, and then you need a picture. And for these questions of the day, the pictures are meant to be very, very quick pictures. They don't have to be colored. They don't even have to be really fancy pictures. Just like a quick little stick figure or something like that's totally fine. Because they're meant to be just kind of like something to jog your memory or to get you thinking about a topic or something like that at the beginning of class. We don't like to spend too much time on that, just on the introduction to that question of the day. Often that's what the whole lesson then is about, is answering that. So if you look like, there's one for the second day of school, there's going to be one for the third day of school on Thursday here. Then there are also something that's highlighted in green. The green things that are highlighted, those are going to be at the front of your workbook, and those are the vocabulary words, right? And so for the vocabulary words, same thing. We'll go over these in class, but for the vocabulary words, for each word, you're going to need the definition for it. You're going to need a color picture of it. And for these, we do spend a little bit more time. So it needs to be a color picture, which means you've got to have at least 3 colors, right? So 3 colors for each one of those. You can cheat a little bit in the sense that I count pencil or whatever you're writing with. That counts as one of the colors. So you got to draw a picture and then add 2 other colors to it. You need an example and a non-example, right? So that kind of helps you out. If for some reason you're sick, let's say you're missed school or something like that, right? One thing that can help you out is at the very front of the workbook, front pages, there are some of the questions of the day and some of their answers. And there's also the vocabulary with all of its answers and everything, right? So that's all right there for you. Just so that, again, if you miss school, it's not like you're falling further and further behind. You should be able to keep up with at least most of it. So on the website, that's the first week. Then if you kind of scroll down, there's the second week of school. Right, I've got most of that filled in. Same thing. The yellow are always going to be the questions of the day. Green are going to be the vocabulary that we cover that particular day. The red stuff, well, those are going to be workbook pages that we cover. So in the workbook, if we're doing a lab activity or we're doing some practice questions or things like that, same thing. It's always listed right in there. So I tried to make it kind of like your one shop stopping trip. Everything that you need is right there for you and everything. Under course materials, right? If you click on that, well, here are some of the main units that we're going to have each section of science that we're in, or each unit. We'll start off with an intro to science for 2 or 3 weeks, which is just kind of a quick what's going on in science and practice measuring and some things like that. Then pretty quickly we'll get right into the main first unit, which is going to be chemistry, right? And so we'll spend probably about 2 months in that. Then we'll have a break from physical science, and we'll do astronomy for about a month or so, which is always super fun because there are new things being discovered all the time. And the bulk of the rest of the year is going to be in physics. We'll talk about physics, things moving and everything like that. If there's time, hopefully we'll get in. There's one last really short unit about ecology and some environmental stuff and everything. All right, so that's where you're going to go to get to your material. So like if you click on the first one, Intro to Science, right, you can see that's kind of divided up into 2 smaller little sections. There's Intro to Science and Metric Measurement. If I click into that, it just keeps breaking it down. There is, I always give you the study guide. The study guide, when you click on it, it literally is just your workbook. It's actually one of the older workbooks. And all I've done is I've filled in most of the workbook for you. Right, so most of the pages, like this guy right here, where there are questions and you might be wondering what the answers are, the answers are always posted for you on Schoology. There's no sense, if you're out sick and you need, some of the answers, there's no sense in you studying the wrong thing or having any questions like that. Really, one of the only things that are not going to be posted in there would be experiments, right? The experiments are not posted in there. If you miss a day where there's an experiment going on, I have in the classroom, there are lab makeup sheets, and you just fill one of those out, staple it right into your workbook on the page where the lab is, and that way you don't lose any points for it, and you're not falling further and further behind all the time. So that's what's going on in the course material section. So if we kind of go back here quickly, that's the course material folder. If we go all the way back to the very beginning, courses, went too far. If we go in there, the next section is the course headquarters folder. Right, in the course headquarters folder, that's where the next big thing that's going on is there's the academic honesty section that you can use. If you have any questions about that, you can ask me, but most of you are pretty familiar with that. Don't copy other people's work and things like that. There is the tech resources, so there's some tech resources to help you out for it. And there's the syllabus, right? So the syllabus is just kind of some of the basic rules of science that we go through each year. So the syllabus, you should have gotten one of these in class. If not, you can ask me, or you can always just access the online version that's right here, right? So for the class syllabus, it's telling you about, what we're going to learn in science this year, right? And one of the big things is science is not just memorizing the periodic table or memorizing a whole bunch of vocabulary. Sure, there's a place for some of that and everything, but we really try to limit that as much as we can. Right? What we want you to understand is science is solving problems, right? You've got a problem. What do I eat for breakfast? What clothing do I wear? Well, you can use science to solve those problems, right? And so you can use it using that scientific method that we'll be working on at the very beginning of the year to try to solve problems and everything. So it's much more than just memorizing things. Grades, your grades for science class are going to be based on a total point system. So there's no one easy thing that is your grade, right? It's not just tests. It's not just quizzes, right? It's all kinds of things. There are lab activities. There are homework activities. There are things that we do in class. There are projects. There's, drawing posters and things like that. There are just tons and tons of things. They all have points assigned to them, and they all just kind of accumulate together, and that's what gives you your final grade. As far as behavior goes, just school-wide, respectful, responsible, ready, safe. That, kind of speaks for itself and everything. When you come into science class each day, right, make sure that you come on in quietly. All of the stuff that you're doing outside the classroom kind of should stop when you enter the classroom. Come on in, find your assigned seat, sit down quietly. As soon as you come in, while you're waiting for all of your other classmates to come in, That's where it's time where you can take out your agenda, and write down what your homework is. You can start working on the question of the day that'll be on the board immediately. If you have extra materials, you can kind of like put them in your backpack or down below your desk or anything like that, so that you're all ready to go for science, right? We want you ready to, get going as fast as we can. A lot of the days for science, it's right away. I mean, they just barely squeeze, especially lab days. We just barely squeeze it in with enough time. So there's not really a lot of time to spend 5 minutes getting ready for class and 5 minutes at the end. You just won't have enough time to do the actual lab. If you miss class, right, what can't you do is, please, unless it's a horrible emergency, don't come at the beginning of class and say, Mr. Jackson, what did I miss? Because it would take a whole class period for me to catch you up and tell you what you missed if you missed school one day. It's different if, like, you checked Schoology and you know what we missed, and you saw, oh, there was a weird, there was a random handout that I had. Normally everything's in the workbooks, but for some reason there was something else. It's a totally different question. Be like, Mr. Jackson, I missed class yesterday. I saw you handed something out. Can I have that quick? That's no problem at all. But just understand, I've got 30 other people that all need a lesson, and a lot of times there's just not a lot of time for me to spend 5 minutes talking with you about it. So, I mean, in homeroom, that would be great. Flex, SOAR, at the end of the day, sometime like that, I would be happy to talk with you. But just kind of understand, time is limited at the very beginning of the, period, when we're doing, getting things started and everything like that. Let's see here. Bathroom. When don't you go to the bathroom? In the middle of science class, of course. Right? I understand that maybe once a year, something like that, something terrible might happen. And if, especially if you don't feel good or something like that, let me know. And no problem. There's no big deal with that. Right? But I'm talking to the student who, like, maybe once a week or something like that is always like, I gotta go and it's an emergency. It shouldn't be an emergency all the time and everything. So let me know again if you're not feeling well or something. I'll be more than happy to let you know. But let's be honest, we're only in class for about 40 minutes. If you go before or hold it till after, I mean, that's what I have to do unless it's really, really bad. Just go some other time. You have lots and lots of other times you can do it. There are 5 designations, A, B, C, D, and E classes, right? So those are the 5 names. Your class is going to be one of those, depending on what period you have science. And then as far as expectations and safety goes, again, we'll cover this in class too, but basically enter the room quietly, sit down in your assigned seat, get ready to go as soon as we can. Listen to all directions, all right? A lot of times it's for your own safety, especially with some of the labs that we're going to be doing. Stay in your seat unless you're supposed to be getting up, right? It's not just time to get up and grab some colored pencils in the middle of the, lesson, or get up and sharpen your pencil, and things like that. You got to ask to do all those kind of things. Otherwise, we'll just have people everywhere and everything. Again, follow directions, right? A lot of times I'm trying to give you directions to try to make your lab experience a little bit more fun and go a little bit more smoothly for you. Because again, we just don't have time to try to do some different things and for you to try to figure out what's going on. There's nothing that we eat or drink this year in science, right? There's not even anything that we smell. You might have learned like the wafting method and everything like that. That's all great, but that's not what we're doing with physical science. We're not getting into a lot of that kind of stuff and everything this year. So don't worry. If you're questioning, should I eat or drink it? The answer is no. No, there's nothing that we're doing unless you brought water into the science classroom. Try to keep your lab neat and clean. Just like you might have heard before, leave the science lab at least as clean, if not cleaner than you found it, because there's often, for a lot of classes, there's another class coming immediately after yours, and it's just not going to work if you leave a terrible mess. Then they've got to clean it up, and they might not have enough time to do the lab, right? So try to keep everything really neat and clean. If I tell you need to wear safety goggles and everything, then you need to do it. I mean, it's not just for heating, chemicals, and things like that. There are certain labs that we do that you simply need to wear goggles just for your own safety. So I'm not going to give you goggles unless it's, something that you need to be wearing them. So please do when I tell you to. All right, use the equipment carefully, right? So everyone else has the opportunity that you have to use it. Some of the things that we do, some of the labs, literally, we just have just enough material for you to use it and everyone else in the classroom. They're not extras laying around. So if you're fooling around and you break one of them, what that means is now all the other groups have to be bigger after you, or we can't even do the lab anymore in some cases. Just like I said before, please clean up your lab area when you're all done so that everyone else has the same opportunity as you do. And I'll give you, or whoever if there's another teacher in for me one day, we'll give you all the materials. Believe it or not, there's a Pennsylvania state law that says you can't go into a science classroom and start rummaging, opening drawers and cabinets and things like that. You might, for example, you might go in, find a drawer, you open it up, it looks perfectly empty, and you're thinking, well, that's weird in a crowded science room. Why is there an empty drawer? But it might be like that on purpose. You never know. The period before you, they might have spilled sulfuric acid or something like that and poured into the drawer. And sure, the liquid portion of it might have dried up, evaporated, or gotten cleaned up, but that doesn't mean that there's not still acid inside of there and everything. So you might, inadvertently touch the bottom of the drawer. It's not strong enough that it even, don't even think about it, doesn't burn your hand or anything like that. But 2 periods later, you itch your eye, and now you have acid in your eye, and you go down to the nurse crying, and then I feel bad, and you feel bad, and everything like that. So please don't go exploring around in the room. A lot of times, it's just for your own safety and everything. All right, so that is the syllabus that's in that folder right there, and that kind of covers most of it. There's the Mr. Jackson contact information. Hopefully, you can figure that out on your own, but that gives you my school email if you need it. I'm in room 229. I know some of the other teachers do Schoology Messenger. I'm not opposed to that in any way, but just so you know, there often are so many messages that they just totally they kind of pile on top of each other and they get lost. So I highly recommend emailing me if I have a question that you can't just wait and come to school. By far the best way is just to see me in school so I can help you out. But emailing probably is the most sure way to actually get me and everything, especially if the messenger doesn't seem to be working. That probably just means there's so many messages that I'm checking it, but I can't even see the bottom of the list or get to it and everything. So we have all that going on. And I think that's the last thing that we need to get to. Here, if we go back to courses in science, that kind of gets us back to the very beginning here. Maybe it does. Okay, course materials, headquarters, and everything. All right, so yeah, then there's the emergency lesson folder, but that's more for a substitute or something. Okay, hopefully that gets you through some of the important things at the very, very beginning of the year or catches you up if it's a little bit later in the year.